State of the franchise is back, and I don't know if there was a more important time for us to get in here and talk about the current state of the San Francisco 49ers as they have just recently fallen to the Vikings. Jason and I are going to break it all down, talk about how concerned should we really be about the San Francisco 49ers that started blazing hot at 5-0 and have seemingly cooled off. We're going to get into it all right now and talk about a lot of different things. We got some news right before this, so we're going to talk about it all. You already know what to do, though. Drop your spicy sourdoughs in the chat, and we're going to get after it right now. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Mr. Aponte, how are we doing today after an eventful week, we should say? Mr. Aponte is frozen for me. I don't know about you guys. So we're off to a good start.
Living
Jason,
the dream,
can
Brad.
you hear me?
As always, never a dull moment. 49ers fan. It just. Oh God, hold
on. Jason,
can you hear me?
It's
barely.
Barely. So what our takeaway is that you're just in so much shock from this last game, these last two games. You're frozen. You're pretty frozen, my guy. I'm not gonna lie. You're frozen for sure. So I don't know, maybe drop out, drop back in, see if that helps. And hopefully we'll see if that maybe help. I don't know. My guy's pretty frozen though. You're looking like Frozone out here. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I can't hear you. We can't see you.
I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. All right.
I hear you.
I can hear you.
Better? Okay. Are we okay now? You can speak?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, yeah. Obviously not ideal right now, but that kind of sums up the 49ers right now at this point. Again, like it's never a dull moment when it comes to the 49ers, and it's never something that is like you kind of just are waiting for the other shoe to drop. But then today we find out about Brock Purdy, and it's just like, man, it really puts a damper on things, especially with the way that game went on Monday. But it's good to see you, Brad, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, no, you're good. We're going to work through it. It reminds me of when the roles were reversed and I was working off that McDonald's Wi-Fi back in the day. So it's all good. We are going to get through this, and I'm just happy to have you back on stream, even though the outcome wasn't exactly what we were looking for. But how concerned are you? Like, let's start there. Like, with what you saw the last 2 weeks, how concerned are you that is this just a step back? Is this just an unfortunate scenario being on the road 2 weeks in a row? Or are the 49ers going to get back on track? What are you kind of thinking up at this point right now?
I think the 49ers are going to get back on track. And I think, again, when we do like our preseason predictions and we look at when the schedule comes out, you're like, win, 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 win. But then you always look around and you're saying, well, what's going to be the game that's the slip up, right? And it's been back-to-back slip ups, right? And still the 49ers had the football with a chance to win the game at the end of the game. I'm not sure that you could ask for anything more than that. I think where the concern comes in is with the new defensive coordinator, which I kind of talked about in our sprint right option earlier. is so many people were hesitant about Robert Saleh. That turned around. So many people want to fire D'Amico Ryans after every first half. That turned around. I think the reason that people are so hard on Steve Wilks is because he's an experienced defensive coordinator. And you would have thought with this, given this talent, given this team, he could just hit the ground running. And I think that's where the concern comes. But if I would have told you, Brad, or if I would have said anybody that's watching, through 7 games, the 49ers would be 5-2. But I changed the losses around. I changed them around. I changed them to Pittsburgh in week 1, and I changed them to the Dallas game on Sunday Night Football. Does that change the way you feel about this team, even though the records are identical, right? And I think that's a proper evaluation when you're looking at everything, because it's like, hey, Cleveland, we could at least point to the weather. We could at least point to Cleveland's defense. Those are things, Jim Schwartz against Kyle, you have all those things that are going for you or against you at this point. But then the Minnesota game is so disappointing because it's Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson, and they have no running game, and you're indoors, even if you are missing Debo and Trent, and you get McCaffrey back. And if I would have told you that the 49ers would have held the Vikings to 22 points and Christian McCaffrey would have had 2 touchdowns, you would have said the 49ers would have scored how many points?
A good amount.
45?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's and when you look at the box score and you look at 22 points isn't a lot, but the fashion in way that they didn't stop the Vikings at all. At all. It seemed like when the Vikings were stalled out was because they missed a throw. They messed something up. It wasn't the 49ers necessarily stopping them. And I think that is what is concerning people so much about the 49ers defense. But if I change the losses around and I put it through 7 games and I still said it was 5-2, you probably have a different way that you're looking about this right now. It's just when you start off 5-0 and we're talking about, well, is this team ever going to lose? And then you go out there and you lose to a PJ Walker-led team, and then Kirk Cousins on primetime without Justin Jefferson and that defense. That's what I think has people in this moment, week to week, a little bit concerned. I think the 49ers are going to bounce back, man. They're too good. They're definitely going to figure it out. But now we have to deal with the fact is, does Brock Purdy play on Sunday or does Sam Darnold play?
Right, because it goes from walking around like we're Superman to all of a sudden like we're chained in kryptonite or something. Like we can't get out of our own way. It feels almost more self-inflicted than anything else at this point. It just feels like missed opportunities is the way that I've kind of been describing it. It's I mean, we'll get into the weeds of it all, but let's focus on the news, obviously, that dropped, and you kind of alluded to it. Brock Purdy got the concussion, and after kind of, I wasn't really sure when it happened. Then I saw Pro Football Talk. He posted the clip where he showed the overhead shot of Brock getting hit. And I went back and I watched it on the All 22, and it's like, oh yeah, he got hit hard. Like he was, he was
his
like
next
this
throw was an interception. His next throw was the pick.
He was going into the quarterback sneak, and his head just went. It just, because he had the linebacker with the free shot go helmet to helmet, and his head just snapped back, and you're like, oh yeah, that's probably where the concussion occurred. And just like you said, they go for it again, quarterback sneak, get the first, and then the first play after that is a pass, and it's the disconnect between Juwan Jennings and Brock Purdy, and then you're like, oh, well, that changes that context a little bit. So overall, though, what would you describe Brock's play? I thought Brock Purdy played really well in that game, and then after that point, which was at the end of the game, we had the 2 interceptions. What did you think of Brock's play, especially with the context of how poorly he played in the Browns game?
It's so strange. The 49ers offense moved all night, right? Like they get the ball on the interception, they're in the red zone, Christian McCaffrey fumbles. Then when they get back, they're moving the ball. Like this is what makes this game so weird to digest and break down, is because yes, while I am of the mind, offense, defense, special teams, coaching, everything top down was all bad in this game. It was. And at certain points, it was terrible. But the offense was moving the football. You have a missed field goal. You have the fumble. they had no problem moving the ball. Brock was fine. Brock was fine in this game. He was fine, and then the interception happens, and obviously now contextualized with this concussion, is like, man, that kind of changes the way you look at it, because a lot of people were under the impression, oh my God, he just completely like choked and barfed on himself. Well, a concussion could change things, right? And he said that Kyle said that he had the concussion symptoms on the plane. Certainly, all of these things are important to note, but Brock was fine even before knowing the concussion thing was there. Like, I thought he was having a very good game. He wasn't, when the 49ers were losing, I wasn't looking at Brock Purdy and saying, man, this is why this team is behind right now. They were behind because they couldn't get off the field on third down. They turned the ball over. They were getting no pressure on Kirk Cousins, regardless of what PFF is saying. It felt like Kirk Cousins was baking cakes back there. And then their coverage was just like allowing people to run wide open. So I never got the sense during this game, while this game was going on, that Brock Purdy was having such a poor game that it was leading to the feeling that the 49ers were having right there. But then obviously once you have the interception on the last drive, and that one kind of like takes the wind out of everything. And that's what people are going to focus on, because I think the biggest detriment to the way that we're evaluating Brock Purdy is that he gets so much credit for all the wins, that now people try to heap everything on him for the losses. And I think one wasn't right in the first place, which was like, oh, it's all him, right? And the other thing isn't true either, that he deserves it now. So like, for me, there was always a gray area and a middle area with Brock, but it's put him in a spot because of so much praise that he's gotten, that he seems to take the brunt of everything when they lose. And I don't think that that's absolutely fair at all either. I don't think the first thing was right. I don't think the second thing's right, if that's the best way I can put it. Gamma says, why is Wolverine wearing a Wolverine shirt? Oh, well, I mean, I got to get out of Spider-Man mode. I've been playing it too much. I was going hard last night, so I was trying to switch out to Wolverine.
No, I think you're spot on with how it's gone. Like, I think, with Brock Purdy last week, he deserved some criticism, because he really did struggle. And I really felt like his struggles came down to gripping the football, whatever that weather situation was. Like, the ball was just not jumping out of his hand like we've become used to. And he was throwing inaccurate passes. And it was just a very uncharacteristic game for Brock. And that was something that we talked about. We watched the film. It was like, yeah, like this, what we're looking for is, will Brock bounce back and be the normal Brock that we're used to? And because everyone watched that game against the Browns, it was like, oh no, what's the term that everyone used? Did he turn back to a pumpkin? Like, did that moment happen? Did the bubble burst? And what Brock proved to me against the Vikings is, no, he's the guy that we think he is. It just came down to a really unfortunate ending, where he does deserve the credit for the loss, in the sense of, they were driving down the field. He threw the game sealing interception to give the W to the 49ers, or to the Vikings. It was a bad decision, in my opinion, to throw it up, and it turns into an interception. Now, obviously, we have additional context that it looks like my guy out here was playing with a concussion, and I feel very well to be able to explain what that's like, because I have played in multiple games with multiple concussions, and I can tell you,
I'm sure
your entire everything is on a different level. Like, the way you see, the way you balance, the way you're processing information. You can't retain information at certain times. So if he genuinely had a concussion, then his decision-making process and everything is going to be hampered as a result. So it is what it is. But I don't think Brock was the reason, right? Because when it comes down to it, you talked about it. The 49ers defense couldn't stop a bloody nose. They couldn't. And like, watching the game, you could feel it. Like, I was there. But after watching the tape, it was honestly one of the worst defensive performances I think I've seen by the San Francisco 49ers over like the last 6 years. Like, it was really concerning, to be honest. Like, and you talked about it. All of the guys running open. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. It felt like it was Fred and Greenlaw and then everyone else, right? Because Fred and Greenlaw were incredible in run defense. They were the two highest graded run defenders in this game. Mooney gets the interception early on. This is what's so funny about football, because people always point to one thing, right? They're going to point to the thing at the half and say, this is what swung the game. But circumstances can lead you to have a different outcome, right? So let's start at the beginning of the game. Mooney Ward gets the interception. The 49ers are rolling. Christian McCaffrey is moving into the red zone. If the 49ers score there and they're up 7-0, that changes the way Kirk is perceived, right? Like, now you've got to go up against it. Now, not only do you not recover the fumble, thank you, Aaron Banks. That was like, you just definitely kicked it away from Christian McCaffrey. But when it's 7-0, right, and then Kirk Cousins has to answer your drive, that's a completely different thing than having a momentum-shifting turnover. Now, the other issue with that is the 49ers immediately allow them to just go right down the field. Like, I have not seen this defense give up such an easy drive and it's 75 yards down the field. Those, and maybe you can say, hey, listen, it's the first quarter, the second quarter, they'll figure it out at half. But again, when you watch this over again, the Vikings stopped themselves. They had a receiver a step short. Kirk missed the throw. Like, the 49ers didn't stop them. So regardless if you want to point to giving up this amount of points, that's what we're watching. If you watch that game and if you watch it again, the 49ers stopped Minnesota. And that is particularly concerning in this matchup because no semblance of a running game. No semblance of it. Not Madison, not Akers, not Justice didn't play it. And it's like, man, they literally have like two guys that they can throw the football to, Jordan Addison and J. Hawkinson, and those guys are just running butt-ass naked the whole time wide open by themselves. And it's like, wow, man, like, you don't have to be a person who knows X's and O's. You don't have to be a defensive coordinator to know, hey, you might want to cover those two guys. You might want to pay some attention to them. Like, that's the stuff that, like, when people get into, well, do you know the scheme? That doesn't matter about scheme. Like, at that point, there's only so many guys that can hurt you. Slow them down. And I think you would know that going into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive side of the football was very concerning, and it's like you talked about. It started off hot, like that interception that Mooney had, phenomenal. And then obviously the situation and the way it continued. You talked about it, the turnover that shifts momentum back towards them, and then after that, it was a struggle for the 49ers defense. It really was a concerning effort. Kyle Shanahan today spoke about the play to end the half. That again, if Mooney is able to bring that in for an interception, it's a really unfortunate circumstance because obviously
Brad,
if he picks that ball,
that play is the poster child for process and results. That is the poster child for it. Okay.
Yeah.
Process is poor. It's wrong. There's no reason for Mooney Ward to be in a cover zero look, covering someone with no safety help at that time when all you have to do is tackle someone inbounds with no timeouts. Now, Mooney Ward intercepting that ball is a good result, but it's a poor process. That's what Kyle's talking about.
It's a terrible
Process has to be better than the result. And that's the problem. That's what he's talking about. That play is the poster child for process over results. The result could have been really good, and you get that interception, and no one bats an eye at it. But there's no reason to put Mooney Ward in that position. That process is poor.
100%. And what is so interesting about the actual call was it's gone against everything Steve Wilks has done up until this point. I feel like every week I'm watching the defensive tape, and I'm no defensive expert. I'm definitely not an expert in coverages or route concepts or anything like that. But I'm watching it. I'm like, why are we playing off in this situation? Why are we playing? Well, why are we running this type of zone coverage in this short yarded concept in a third and like manageable? Like, why are we giving it to them? Like, I've had these questions all throughout the year. And then in a situation where it's like conventional wisdom would tell play prevent, keep everything in front of you, and just don't let them get into any type of position where they can kick a field goal. Because what, it was like 16 seconds left or something like that. And you run zero blitz, and Talanoa Hufanga isn't even like really blitzing. He's just kind of like spying. I'm like, what is Talanoa doing? Like, because you would have got the numbers based on how many guys they brought. And if Talanoa comes off the edge, it makes it even a more difficult throw. But he doesn't even come off the edge. He's just kind of like spying Kirk. And I'm looking at the whole thing, and I'm like, what's happening? And like, your point is 100% accurate. Like, obviously, if we get the interception, it's not a big talking point, but the process is the problem. It's like we shouldn't have been in that situation to be even begin with. There should have been a row of safeties back there that if a ball is completed, he gets tackled right away or something like that. It's so opposite of the high to low concepts that it feels like the 49ers defense has ran up until this point in that moment that ultimately swung the entire game because the San Francisco 49ers lost by less than a touchdown. And it changes everything. And it comes back down to missed opportunities. So the question becomes to you, Jason, is okay, we're concerned about the defense's performance. That for whatever reason, I don't know if it was individual performance, scheme, or the combination of both of why they couldn't stop anything. How much of this are we putting on Steve Wilks? How much of the concern comes from Steve and him trying to fit into the Niners versus the Niners trying to fit into him?
I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it right there when you talk about that, right? What this defense does with the wide nine is something that's not really what Steve Wilks is into, right? And he's a secondary guy, which is also why people are concerned. Remember, I'm going to go back to the point I made earlier. Steve Wilks is an experienced defensive coordinator. D'Amico Ryans was getting into his first year. So you can understand the concern. Robert Saleh, his first few times like being a defensive play caller. There was a large expectation that Steve Wilks was going to be a guy who was a defensive coordinator, figure it out, hit the ground running. You know why? He was experienced. That's why. That's why so many people are concerned. So here's the biggest thing. One, you're not finding a way to creatively get the pass rush there. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too, because I've got some thoughts. But then you're a secondary guru. And the secondary is now just allowing guys to run free wide open, right? Like, this is something that is not just a Minnesota Vikings thing. This is a Rams concern. This is from other weeks. And this is a league that all they do is build tape. And all they do is build on trends. So they're watching what's happening. You can guarantee the Cincinnati Bengals, with a week off, watched that game, took all that and said, hey, if that's what they're going to run, this is what we're going to run. I've got some bad news too. The Cincinnati Bengals personnel is better than the than the Minnesota Vikings without Justin Jefferson, right? But I do want to caution against like the whole like we've got to get rid of Wilks and move on. Like, one, that can't happen because imagine bringing in a defensive coordinator in week 8 and saying, hey, figure this thing out, man. Figure it out. Like, just, figure it out. Like, get it going. That's not going to happen. So Steve Wilks does have to do this, right? He does have to figure this out. And right. I wouldn't be shocked if Kyle Shanahan himself has to step in as the head coach, as a guy who, and I want to make sure I preface this by saying this, as a guy who understands defensive rules and offense so well that even he could give some pointers as to, like, listen, man, you're getting a look that looks like this. And for anybody that says, why is he telling the defensive coordinator this? He shouldn't be. Listen, he's a head coach. Delegate and get in there. If you can help, do it all. Like, you have to do it all. It all falls on you.
Yeah.
So Kyle Shanahan's going to get in here and start to get in the weeds in there. And again, the offense isn't nearly as much of a problem as people want to make it out to be, right? Sure, there was some questionable decisions in this game. I didn't love the 55-yard field goal attempt. You're down a touchdown. You need a touchdown. You kick a field goal, and then you need a touchdown. Like, I didn't love that thought process right there. But, hey, whatever. I don't get paid the big bucks. For me, it's more about Steve Wilks has to figure this out. And I think the one thing that's frustrating for 49ers fans is the pass rush was something that none of us were worried about, because you just look across this pass rush and you look across this defensive line and you see guys that are the best player on someone else's team that are your third best player on your team, the second best player on your team, right? And now that pass rush, PFF pressures be damned. And you know me, Brad, I love pressures, right? I love me some pressures. I'm a big pressures over sacks guy. Those pressures they were not impactful. They just weren't impactful. I'm sorry, man. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about all these pressures. Oh, no, Bosa got 6. This guy got, not impactful. None of it. Not impactful. You have to finish. Kirk Cousins was never uncomfortable. Credit to Kirk Cousins also. You know how to get the ball out. Steve Wilks has to find a way to play to his players' strengths. And there's ways to get lesser players to fit with scheme, schematically, than it is right now with all of this talent around everywhere. And I think that's where the 49ers fans are frustrated, right? Like, again, 22 points doesn't seem like a lot. But when you watch that game, tackles, third down, can't get off the field, can't get to the quarterback. That's the part that has people frustrated, man. And I feel you. I do think they'll get it figured out, but Kyle Shanahan's got to step in a little bit more right now and help him with certain things. If they can fine-tune it. Remember, just last year, DeMeco Ryans was getting taken to the shed by the Kansas City Chiefs, right? I mean, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings are the same thing. I'm trying to give you historical precedent of times when guys weren't, performing, figured it out. And also, this team particularly peaks at the end of the year. I think we got a little spoiled with 5-0. And we forgot what it was like to normally be
to normally be stressing out at the beginning of the year opposed to in the middle of the year, right?
Right.
No, I think you did a phenomenal
100%.
job explaining all of that. And I think too, like you kind of opened up the can of worms with the defensive line and, the lack of pressures, because that's another thing that I've seen a lot of fans concerned about is just why can't we get home? Why can't it? But it's a duality, right? We understand. It's like, if we can't cover on the back end, you're also not going to provide enough time for your pass rush to get home. And with that occurring, those pressures aren't accumulating to much of anything. And you also have to give credit to Kirk Cousins. The one play where he got sandwiched by 2 of his own offensive linemen, and then he somehow stays on his feet while kind of falling back, throws, and leads his like Kirk played a great game. You got to give primetime Kirk some credit. You do, unfortunately. He knew Kyle was watching.
I feel like I jinxed us, right? I jinxed us, Brad. I jinxed us.
Hey,
you know how I say, like, it doesn't matter what I say or anything like that? Like, I jinxed us because I sent out a tweet saying, because Kirk wasn't getting traded, that Brock Purdy killed the Kirk to San Francisco narrative. And yet here we are going into week 8, and there's still it's still beeping. It's still, the lifeline is still beeping. The heartbeat is still beeping. Like, it's still like right there. And again, I'm a big proponent of, like, I have no control of what goes on the field. There is no jinx. There is no, whatever, football gods, whatever. You got to get it done on the field. But I feel semi-responsible for this, man. I really do. I'm not gonna lie. I want to take this one on the chin. We preach accountability
get ahead of it
from the coaching. Yeah, I just want to preach accountability on this one. I'm sorry. I apologize because I got really happy and excited about that, and yet it persists. And performances like that by Kirk will always be the things that Kyle looks at and he's just like, you see, and that's the thing. It's like, it's hard to get mad because, well, I mean, it's not hard to get mad. It's pretty easy to get mad. But when it's prime time, you kind of expect Kirk to regress. But even in the Eagles game in prime time, he didn't look terrible. They just fumbled the football like 3, 4, 5 times, right? Like Justin Jefferson had a touchdown that he fumbled up. Kirk's been playing well, man, and the Vikings aren't nearly as bad as anybody thought. I think we all just kind of fell back onto like, well, it's prime time, it's Kirk Cousins. But Kirk played well, man. That's it. Like, you have to say it. You have to say it if you're objective. If you're going to be objective, you have to say that Kirk Cousins played well, on top of saying that the 49ers defense didn't perform. Both of those things are absolutely true.
Yeah, he carved us up. We had our opportunities. We didn't take advantage. And, I said it earlier. It feels like a big part of this game came down to missed opportunities. Last week against the Browns, literally missed opportunities. So the 49ers, and this is also the other thing too. It's like you talked about it. The 49ers only gave up 22 points, the defense. That's somewhat remarkable considering they gave up 24 first downs, and it felt I logged on my notes. I was calling them free first downs because that's what it felt like. It was just like, oh, you want a first down? You get a first down. You get a first down. You get a first down. They just weren't putting up that big of a fight. It felt like obviously they're trying their hardest, and it wasn't for lack of effort and things like that. It's just the way everything played out. The defense found themselves consistently on the field giving up first downs. And it just was, we talked about it. You can pick your poison, whether personal performance, missed leverage, missed tackles, missed coverages, bad coverages, penalties. Pick your poison for why they were giving up so many first downs. They still kept them to 22 points, still gave them an opportunity to win the game down the stretch. So it's like this weird double-edged sword of like, man, that was one of the ugliest performances we've seen from this 49ers defense in a long time. But the silver lining is only gave up 22 points for an offense that seemingly was clicking after that first interception. And the 49ers were still in it. So this is how I'm looking at it. Am I concerned after that performance by that team? Yeah, I'm concerned. That was because if that persists, you're not going very far in the playoffs with that type of performance. But that's the beauty of where we are in the season, is they have time to adjust, correct, and do different types of things. And that leads me to my next question, because, we know Kyle Shanahan loves Kirk Cousins. It's his draft crush. It was his guy. They got him. That's his draft crush. Just like my draft crush, Brian Burns. That's my guy. It's always going to be my guy. But it doesn't feel like Brian Burns is going to be available. Should the San Francisco 49ers be looking to add pieces to that defensive line? Or do you think secondary is a bigger target for the 49ers to potentially make a move at the deadline?
The 49ers lost that game and probably lost any shot at getting Neil Hunter. If that makes any sense, Brad.
You're breaking up a little bit. You said the 49ers lost a chance at trading for Daniil Hunter because that win puts the Vikings in a position to contend for a wild card spot.
Right. And that's the thing, is the Vikings had some bad luck. And now here Justin Jefferson is going to be back right on time. He feels a little bit better. Why would the Vikings move Daniil Hunter now? But if you lose that game, now Daniil Hunter becomes much more of an option when you have 6 days before the deadline. So that's up.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit.
If offensive men are available, then I know. I'm sorry. It's killing me
you're
right
good
now.
now.
I was doing so good. Hold on.
You're good now.
Okay, so offensive linemen are not going to be available because it's such a premium position. Who's trading offensive linemen?
No one.
Who's going to trade an offensive lineman at this point, right? Garrett Bowles,
They
maybe,
would,
right? Like Garrett Bowles,
yeah.
maybe, right? Like you think about Garrett Bowles, but then Brad, I ask you as the offensive line guru, he's a left tackle. Do you just flip him to right tackle? Because that was easily Colton McKivit's worst game. No, right? Okay.
Yeah, I don't
So
think
that
I
goes
don't think
away.
you can just flip him to
Secondary.
left right tackle.
No. Secondary. Patches 13's not on the board. It's not happening. Like Denver may be blowing it up, but trading older pieces is not trading cornerstone pieces. They're not trading cornerstone players. He's out. So where do you go, right? And then I ask this question. Is even adding more to this pass rush the actual answer, or is it schematically something that needs to be fixed because you already have a ton of talented players? You have Armstead, you have Hargrave, you have Bosa. Randy Gregory's been playing well. Dre Jackson's fallen like completely out of favor at this point. His snap share
Yeah.
is very low. It's not what you want to see, but it's what's happening. So who are the targets, right? Montez Sweat. I would have Montez Sweat over Chase Young. Chase Young's injured too much for my liking. Montez Sweat is a little bit younger and would cost less, and I think he would be great. But this is the point that I was making about schematically. Dante Whitner nailed it on after the game on NBC. I don't know if anybody saw. I know he catches a lot of heat for like some of his like hot take stuff like that, but he said under Vic Fangio, if you're in max protect and there's 7-on-4, then we'd send 3 and we drop 8, and then that means we would have everyone covered, right? But
Yep.
there's 7-on-4, which means you still have an advantage in the back end, and you're still not covering anyone. Schematically, something has to change. Schematically, adjustments need to be made. If you're dropping 7, right, against what, 5, cover them up. Cover them up. And what Whitner said was, especially against a quarterback that has no chance at running. Kirk's not moving. It's not Lamar Jackson. You know, like if you rush 3 at Lamar Jackson and you drop if you drop 8, he's gonna carve you up for 8 and 10 every time. It's like little things like that is the part that, while I do expect the 49ers to be trade deadline guys and be buyers and be people that are going to look to add, there's little things that need to change with the personnel that they have now before they start looking at adding other things, because maybe if they don't change those things, adding someone else is not going to be the answer. So I don't know if I gave an answer, but I'm far more concerned with those little details, and they shouldn't be really little. But yeah, it's tough to see guys who are super talented, and then you hear, you hear me? Did I just cut out?
No, I hear you.
You hear me? So it's tough to see guys like Nick Bosa being like, yeah, we normally were a 4-man rush team. I'm not sure like what we're trying to do. Like there's nobody on the same page right now. And that's the part that kind of worries me more than anything, because I would rather the entire team get beat with conviction behind the entire game plan than have people look around at each other like, I have no idea.
No, I think that's a phenomenal point. They need to fix internally. That I do agree that I do think they should add additional help. You touched on Drake Jackson. I think Drake Jackson has not performed to the level that I think we expected him to play at this year. And he is going to continue to be outsnapped by Gregory and Cleveland at this rate. And if he keeps playing at this current rate, he might not be on the field very soon, which is unfortunate. But I do have a lot of belief in Drake that he could be a guy for the San Francisco 49ers. He has a ton of raw talent. He's young. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he can still develop and be the guy that we expect him to be. It's just not right. It's not happening right now. And the 49ers don't have the luxury of patience right now. And so that's why I think they still need to address edge. It's been something that I've been hot on for about a month because partly due to seeing Drake struggle a little bit. And obviously they get Gregory. But I do like Sweat as well because he provides that speed element. That's the biggest thing that I'm looking for off the edge opposite of Bosa is speed. Anything that we can get to closely resemble what we saw with D Ford and Bosa back in the heyday of 2019 when the defensive line was all gas, no brakes. Like that's what I'm looking for. And I would agree with you. I'm with Sweat over Chase Young at this point because he does provide that speed element, and I think that complements perfectly with what Bosa's working with. And we know he's a quality defensive end as well. So I do think the 49ers should be buyers. I think they need to go find a piece, two pieces, whatever it takes, and it needs to be on that defensive side of the football. I'm good with the offense. If they want to add an additional wide receiver to kind of supplement the issues with Deebo Samuel, I don't see Danny Gray being activated from IR at any time. So I don't know what that's going to look like. So, but I really do think I think you make a great point. They need to fix internally, get on the same page, dial in, and then once they do that, then you can add pieces to that mix. But we know what it is though, right? Like they got to go all in and continue to make as many changes or additions to I think the defensive side of the football as they can. And we've seen how quickly, things can change with injury. So the hope is we just got to keep adding depth because if Cleveland or Gregory gets hurt at this point, they don't have edge depth. They really don't. Like against the Arizona Cardinals, they were putting out Austin Bryant, and I was like, oh no. That was before they traded for Gregory, and I was like, man, if Austin Bryant has to play this many snaps, the 49ers are in trouble. So edge is still something that I think they need to obtain. But let me get to some of these super chats. I have been apologies to everyone sending super chats. I've been hoarding some of these. This was from earlier. Keith Murphy says that's why KC doesn't sneak Mahomes, talking about the concussion issue and all that type of stuff. Keith dropped another one. Says to your point, Jason, where does Kyle adjusting his schedule to be more involved with defense this week? Hopefully, it has an effect. Hopefully, and you talked about it. Like we know Kyle is very in tune with what defense is. He specifically learned early on in his career the defensive side to help the offensive side. So we know Kyle knows what's up. So would you agree that would be, I know you talked about it already, but would you agree that would be a positive to get Kyle involved?
100%. And I mean, we have heard that he's been involved at halftime now with adjustments as well too. So like, why wouldn't he? As a head coach, you have to be involved in everything. You have to have your hands in everything. And why wouldn't you lend that? It's not disrespect to Steve Wilks. And if I was Steve Wilks, I would not be upset looking for something that he's seeing because he does see it so well. And I think that's something that nobody can really take away from Kyle.
Yeah. So hey, Kyle's the head man in charge, and I do feel for Steve in a sense, right? Because Steve's trying to work someone else's system. It's Steve, and I think that's maybe where they're running into some issues, is because you have, like you said earlier too, Chris Kosurik is running his wide nine, how he runs his wide nine. He takes no input from the DC. He's like his own little D-line DC doing what he's got to do. And you got to pair what Steve's trying to do with the back end, which is a little different from what they used to do with D'Amico. And that's where D'Amico was such a quality DC. I think back to the Bengals game in 2021 where they're trotting out Ambry Thomas, and he adjusted his entire scheme to help Ambry and not put Ambry in harm's way. I think they ran basically a bunch of cover two the entire game to keep Ambry from having to be in one-on-one matchups with these phenomenal wide receivers that they had. And a big reason why the 49ers won that game in overtime was because of the D'Amico masterclass that he put on from a schematic standpoint while down all his starting cornerbacks. So I don't even know what the hell my point was, but yeah, we need to get something going on the defense, and I would say you'd probably agree with that.
I think no. I think that's absolutely right. Like it's about doing what's best to play to your player's strengths, right? You run cover two, cover three for Ambry, all that stuff, right? And it's like, how do you find a way to help the pass rush get there if everybody understands it's not like it's a 2 or 3 week thing. Everyone understands when you play the 49ers. Get the ball out quickly. We're gonna run screens. If they want to blitz, then we have screens for that, everything, right? There's a fine line that needs to be walked. Some more man, maybe a little bit more press. Help your guys on the front, and when you start to get pressure up front, then it helps your guys on the back. I don't have the answers. I just know whatever is going on right now is not exactly working, and they're still working through some things 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see. We got another super chat. Let me get to this guy. Roberto. Oh no. Talking Head says, whether you're pro Purdy or not, if Kyle truly wants Cousins, and he always has, forget waiting for next year. Get him now. There's a path. No time to wait. Uh, I feel like that would work in Madden. I feel like that would be challenging mid-season, just because I do know it reminds me of the Jimmy G situation all over again, where like when they were flirting with Tom Brady, like we know how much this locker room rallies around their quarterback. They rallied around Jimmy. They're rallied around Brock. I don't know how that would be perceived. You know what I mean? Because Brock is one of their guys in that locker room. So I think you would really have to kind of balance that. If you're Kyle, is like, what is the locker room's reaction going to be to that?
I, it's tough, man. Not after 2 games that I'm going to do that again, right? The interesting part about this Purdy thing is like everyone was in a rush to like automatically label him like, the franchise guy. And when I said, hey, this should be a time where you should be impressed with everything that he's doing, let's continue to gather information. We forget that Brock Purdy is still in his teens when it comes to career starts, right? And there's still growth to be had for him, right? Like there is still growth to be
Right.
had for him. If you believe that Brock Purdy has plateaued within his teens as a career start, like that doesn't really make sense to me at that point. Everything is about gathering information. I always like to give myself as much time to figure out who somebody is as opposed to use what you see right away to make a sweeping decision. I know that people love that better because then you can always come back to it and say, I knew from the start. That's not the way you're supposed to be evaluating. You're supposed to be going through the process and realizing that there's room to grow. And if you believe that Brock Purdy's plateaued within this time, then the 49ers are in more trouble than people really want to lead on, because I don't think he is. And he better not be. He better not be. And that's the thing. It's like, if you believe that, then you believe that for whatever reason you have. But there's no way that you can tell me that Brock Purdy is going to be who he is based on this short sample size. And one way or another, there has to be way more waiting when it comes to crowning quarterbacks for whatever reason, whether you think they're good or bad.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like that would be a knee jerk reaction, because also, what are you giving up to go get Kirk? Like, you're giving up. That's a quarterback. That's a some would say a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Like, I know he's definitely a polarizing quarterback, but he has ability. So what do you like? There's a lot that comes along with that, and I don't think it's as easy as I would say. If you didn't have a quarterback, yeah, I would be fine with that. But I think there's enough belief internally in Brock Purdy that just they would just wait till free agency. If that's the case, they get through the year and they're like, you know what, maybe we need something else. Then free agency, maybe. But like, I don't think they're trading for a quarterback. I don't. And this is the thing. It's like, I know Shannon Sharp has kind of been in the kind of talking about all this stuff, like Brock Purdy's not elite, not all that stuff. I came on my channel and I said, there's no way I'm saying Brock Purdy is elite, because for me to say Brock Purdy is elite, I need a body of work. There's no, like, you can play like you're elite, but that doesn't mean you're elite. Like, you have to put it together. You got to string together seasons of playing consistently at an elite level before anyone's calling you elite. Like, the reason why Mahomes is at that level is because he did it right away and he never stopped. He just kept going. And so it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, Mahomes is elite. We see the arm, we see the winning pedigree. He's elite. And we were able to say that pretty early on. With Brock, he was playing at a really high level, but there's no way anyone can say he's an elite quarterback yet because, to your point, he doesn't even have a full season under his belt. We got to stack W's. And so just like we're still evaluating what Brock is, so are the San Francisco 49ers. They obviously have a really good idea what he is, and they have a belief in him, but we're still stacking info. We're still stacking weeks. We're still stacking games. We got to see. We had to see, okay, he dealt with adversity against the Browns. How does he respond to that? He responded pretty well. So we got to continue to see. Now we have some more adversity. Now we have some injuries on top of it. How is he going to handle not practicing all week, potentially being able to go against the Bengals? What's that going to look like? So we're building our case on Brock to just see if he is the franchise guy. My issue with Shannon's thing was he was kind of cutting the legs out of Brock while calling him not elite. I think the point is correct. Brock is an elite quarterback. You can't be. He hasn't played enough. And he hasn't won a Super Bowl or anything like that. That's when you really start getting that elite type, like that on my soapbox. Like, you got to win some Super Bowls. You got to stack some stuff. I don't think Brock is at that point yet. You can be playing at a high. So I think you get what I'm saying. We're still trying to figure it out with Brock and all that stuff. And I don't think necessarily trading for a guy like Kirk Cousins right now is necessarily the answer. Roberto says spending too much on the D line to get 0 sacks. I don't know. I'll let you take this one since I just went on a big long-winded rant.
No, you're good. I mean, I think again, there's a middle ground between feeling like this defensive line hasn't exactly performed, and there's a way to fix it. But I do know that anybody who's underwhelmed, I'm not going to talk them out of being underwhelmed, because how could you not be? Again, we set our watch to this patch, and just said this rush is going to go do his thing, and everything else is going to take care of itself. Now here we are into week 8, and PFF pressures be damned. A lot of people have the right sentiment where it just hasn't performed like the way that you thought. So I'm not going to get mad at anybody about that anymore. Like, I used to be the guy to be like, oh, look at the pressures, look at the pressure, look at this, look at that, look at this. And it's like, man, just watch the game. Like, you're not getting what you thought you would get. You're not getting that disruption. Obviously, you're getting teams reacting, whether it's chipping, match protect, or they're throwing the ball out quickly. All those things are true, but still, you can still say 2 things are true, that the defensive line has not done what we thought they would, and there's some adjustments that need to be made.
Yeah.
Pass rush,
Yeah.
I think.
No, I agree. I agree with what you had to say. So it's a frustrating 2 weeks for the San Francisco 49ers. Frustrating on defense, frustrating on offense, all 3 phases. And it's going to be really interesting to see what team we get against the Bengals. So, hey, we don't even have to get too far into the weeds with the Bengals. We're still trying to figure out even if Brock Purdy is going to be this quarterback, Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback. We all know how good and talented the Bengals are with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They got a lot of weapons. Joe Mixon. They have a pretty solid defense. So it's going to be a good test for the San Francisco 49ers here coming up. I guess I'll just ask you this last question here. What is kind of your high level thoughts on the Bengals coming into town?
Well, I think again, if you're looking at, well, they struggled in week 1, they struggled in week 2, they struggled in week 3. Like, if you're looking at them that way, I think that's the wrong way to look at that, because now look at the way you're evaluating your own 49ers, right? This is a very much a week-to-week league. They had a bye week. Joe Burrow is realistically going to be more healthy. T. Higgins is going to play in this game. It is Zach Taylor, who is an offshoot of like Stefanski, Shanahan, all that stuff. Like, it's all the same thing. Stefanski, O'Connell, Shanahan, all that same kind of offense. Then you have the personnel that they offer. It's going to be a major test. So if you look back and say, well, the Bengals lost to this team in week 1, the Bengals lost to this team in week 2, they looked real, like, we need to stop getting out. We got to get out of that. Because if that's the case, then we wouldn't be so concerned about the 49ers the last 2 weeks. It's very much week to week. I expect the Cincinnati Bengals to prove to be a high-level test. And what scares me more than anything is the rest of the schedule remaining, because you have the Cincinnati Bengals, you have a bye, you have Jacksonville, you got Seattle twice, you got Philadelphia. Like, this is not going to get easier on the schedule,
Ravens looking
right?
on
And there are
fire.
the Ravens on Christmas, my God. Like, there are no more gimme games, and there never were gimme games on this schedule. Remember when we talked about the Steelers? Oh, why are you hyping up a team? I've seen those comments. No, it's respect. And now there are no gimme games. I don't want to hear 49ers saying anything about gimme games at this point. If they can't get it done against Minnesota with the lack of weapons, all that stuff, there are no gimme games, and the schedule gets exponentially harder, because look at what Baltimore just did to Detroit. Maybe Cincinnati's a different team coming out of the bye. Now you got Seattle looking really good. I hate the fact that they keep getting better. Philadelphia just added Kevin Byard. All of these things combined have the 49ers in a moment where you have to get it together now. You cannot mess around. And if you go into that bye and then you lollygag into Jacksonville's going to smoke you too. So you have to figure it out sooner than later. This is not going to get easier with the schedule, and there are no easy wins left on the schedule at all. Not that there ever was, to be honest.
Yeah, great. Well said. Well said. And I think we'll end it there because, man, it's been a long week. It's been a long 2 weeks. And
Well, it's been a
hopefully,
long stream because I'm out here on the McDonald's Wi-Fi. That's more than anything. That's it.
hey, but we were able to hear you well enough that we got some fire takes and some fire analysis from you. So just glad that we could get back for State of the Franchise and talk about this, because we were living in fairy tale land there for a second. 5-0, felt like 49ers were on top of the world, and all of a sudden comes crashing down to like, all right, now the adversity strikes. Now who are we? And hey, nothing like some adversity to reveal who we really are. And that's one of the positives of the struggle, is that no one ever wants to go through that. But at the same time, we're going to be able to see who this team is and how they respond. And now they got a big task against the Bengals. And boy, do they want to come out with that win. And just like you said, going into the bye, potentially 0-3. That's not going to be a relaxing bye. I'll tell you that for those guys. They're going to be tinkering the whole time and not get the mental break that they definitely deserve. So this is a big week. It's a big week coming up. You got any content coming the rest of the day, rest of the week? You wanna plug? Oh, we lose you. We lose.
Not really. I mean, honestly, I'll just keep writing for Nine Nation, but I need to stay on streams for a little bit, just at least until like Friday. So Friday we'll get back to stream right option, but it's just gonna be chill. Like tomorrow, like no more like that. But yeah, shout out to you guys, man. Thank you guys. It's good to be back. Had to take a little week because I had to get some things straight in my life too, man. Too, but and also I didn't want to rant about the kicker. So I was just like, you know what? Maybe this is the best week for me to kind of just take a step back a little bit. So shout out to you guys, though, man. Appreciate you. Check out Niners Nation. You can check out all my work on there. Too. And yeah, follow me on Twitter and make sure you like and subscribe to both channels, everything. Shout out to you, Brad. Thank you guys for putting up with it. But I promise we'll get it right next week. Everything's going to be fine. We're getting back to normal. The same sort of issues that Brad and I are having on this show are what the 49ers are going through, and we will have multiplied issues.
It's pretty simpatico, 49ers and state of the franchise. So it's pretty on point. Well, I'm glad you're able to make it on. I'm gonna be doing a film breakdown in probably about a half an hour. So if you guys want to stick around, and I'm gonna say let's break down the offense. We'll break down the offense, see how it does, because honestly, the defense is just a low light after low light. We might do it on Thursday. You guys might be sick of this game by then. But stick around. I'll be doing a film breakdown. There he goes. Uh, the McDonald's Wi-Fi survived as long as it could, and we lost Aponte at the end. But stick around. So I'm gonna say, let's go 3:30. 3:30. I'll be doing a film breakdown. So if you guys want to take a look at the 49ers offense, how they performed, all that different type of stuff, we're going to get into it. Again, like I said, there's actually a lot of pretty solid stuff by the 49ers offense that made me feel much better than the week before. And so we'll at least have a little bit of optimism. And obviously, we'll be able to identify when Brock got hurt and what happened after Brock got hurt. So it's going to be crazy. But shout out to all you guys for tapping in. Make sure you go like and sub to Aponte's channel. And we'll be back next Wednesday for State of the Franchise. So taking half a cookie, take a pixelated cookie. Just take a pixelated one. Kind of a frozen cookie or something like that. But I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes on my channel, and we'll do the film breakdown. So I'll see you guys then. Appreciate everyone for tapping in. I'm out of here. Aponte's internet already chucked up the deuces. So we're out of here. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.